And we're back. I feel really short. This is weird. I do keep the chair down. Is your chair down? I think I keep them both down because the table's really small.
Yeah.
So I just just
or else you're like this.
That. I don't want people knowing that sometimes I wear pants.
Fair enough.
What's going on, man?
Oh, not much. Thanks for having me over and helping you fix a TV.
Okay, real quick though, why do you need an engineering degree to put up a fucking wall mount? Like, you saw the thing, right? So I got this, okay. So I bought a really big TV to force myself to relax, right? To sit down, enjoy it a little bit, because I literally have none of the time, right? So I as a 30th birthday gift to myself, I bought myself basically my home theater, right? So I bought a little entertainment unit, like just a TV unit, and I don't trust it with the TV on it because I don't think it's built for TVs that large. Yeah. So I bought one of those freestanding mounts, so you don't have to put it into your wall, but you can put it up high, right? And it's got cable management and all that shit. And this was the most complicated thing. It's got this giant floor plate that's like 100 pounds. Okay, by not 100, it's probably like 50 pounds. But it's like
big. And
then you got to put the arm of the thing in the thing and then screw it in without screwing up. And then by the time you got over, I had it pretty much, I had the cross done, but we were having trouble with just putting the TV on and securing it.
Yes.
I'm exhausted.
What's funny is, like, though, when you're done, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, well.
It's all done.
We just left it because we had to come and film. But, it's just in the middle of my living room, unplugged from anything.
But it's attached.
It's attached. It's done. So now when
did it.
When Jess comes home, like, hey, put you to work.
It works with everything. Yeah. And it was funny. Today at work, I'm like, I'm done lifting, right? Because, like, I'm here.
And as soon as you come through the door, look, my TV.
Yeah, last night I was stage manning a show at Paradise Theater, and there was lifting involved.
Who knew?
I'm tired. But it was, other than the little bit of lifting, it was awesome. It was a memorial for Michael Fanfara, who is an amazing Toronto piano player one of the guys that could play classical just as good as gospel, just as good as the blues.
He was one of those chameleons, man.
Yeah. And the people there was just amazing. They had like a bit of a rhinoceros reunion, which was so cool. And John Finley could still sing. Oh my God. Oh, you got it. Yeah. Wow.
That's awesome.
It was so good. And then percussion, John and the Lincolns,
wow.
And Downchild Blues Band, right? It's just all the old cats, and it was great. It was. I haven't seen a lot of these guys play live in COVID would be, and then to see them all on the big stage and being in charge of them was fun.
So, tell the people.
Yeah.
Because I'm too lazy to. What stage managing is?
Oh yeah, it depends on every gig. Generally, yeah. So I guess my job last night was just making sure the proper amps were ready. Things put on stage, like taken off stage, like congas and mics. I started cleaning the mics after because one of the guys asked for it. I'm like, yeah, we should be cleaning them. And I didn't, and then it's more that's more of a sound guy thing in COVID, I think. I don't know, it's new things, but I just kept doing it. But yeah, it's essentially making sure the next band is ready, side stage, to get on stage.
And herding sheep.
Herding sheep, and then making sure the proper amps, because, everybody wants their own amp and everything. And it was pretty easy, actually. It was only 3 guitar amps and 1 bass amp, 1 drums. But
did you have a lot of hands? Like a lot of stage hands with you?
No, it was just me. Yeah.
Damn.
And but it was easy. It was an easy. They were very all accommodating. We had a B3 organ, and so that was yeah.
Those are fun to set up.
Those are heavy. Yeah, they rented it in. So yeah, they got it rented in. Yeah, last night was really the biggest problem was, okay, so it's not a big, I mean, there's really never a lot of room behind where the band is.
No.
But so there's a lot of these old guys that haven't seen each other since maybe the 60s, maybe the 70s, maybe the 80s. So they start talking, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, let's go.
The show is on.
Oh, my God. And then, it's just so funny, right? It's just like, I grabbed Peter Hodgkin's bass from, he's old, right? And he's slow. And I'm just like, give me another, tune it in here. And then he's like, I have another one. I'm like, you're only playing 4 songs. But I use it on the last one. So, he's got this brand new Ibanez. And I'm like, wonder why he has that. And I'm like, probably because his hands are, it's a smaller neck and everything. And of course, I pull out this old P bass. I couldn't tell what year it is because it was so beaten up and everything. And I put it around me and I tune it. And the action is like so high. The strings are so high off the neck. And I'm like, so he probably bought this new bass because he's like, oh, my hands must be getting tired. It's like, no, all you need is a good setup on your old bass.
Why didn't he set it up?
Well, I don't know. Guys are guys, Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Every musician's different.
I'm one to talk. I've retired my Taylor because I've screwed it up to the point of no return.
Right.
So now it's just my practice guitar.
And it's just like, and a lot of, I don't know, like every musician's different. And every guy's like, I've never had to do that before, and they just, I don't know. Yeah. Oh my God. But lovely, man. Oh my God. And then, so they're all on the stage, right? And then the singer's like, okay, John, he's like, I'm just going to do the first song with just Danny and the keyboard player, the guitar, and then so the bass and drummer, I'll call you guys out. And I'm like, no, right? And Peter's wobbling around. and then I'm like right at the side of the stage when he calls him out, right? And I'm like, don't trip, stay plugged in. And he did, and he played amazing, and it was so lovely to see him. And they're, I don't know, I'm a huge fan of these old guys that are just done it, right? Like Michael Funfire, for instance, like he got, he's still playing all the time. But there's a guy that, played with Lou Reed and everybody's hired him. And just like, Danny West was there and he, same thing. And they're just, you just keep getting hired. And Bette Midler and Alice Cooper and whatever. It's just like, wow, and still,
the stories they must have, man.
The stories, oh yeah, they're just, oh my God, never mind. I was catching a bunch of them last night, and it was like just so amazing, and also there's stories of like their regrets of things they passed on or chose or whatever, right? It's everybody's got a battle, right? So it's just, and those guys never had the Facebook and the Instagram and all that to make their life look better than it was when it wasn't, and all whatever, or get get gigs or whatever. They were all like phone calls, right? You're on the road, come back, and it's like, oh, I got a message from who? Really? And then you call back, and you might have been too late to call back, right? Or, I mean, people now, like, if I'm bad for this too. Like, I text someone, I'm like, all right, are you free? Like, waiting for the answer, right?
Yeah, no, I'm the same way, man. Like, especially when you have somebody else on another text waiting for your response, like that's either hiring you for the gig or whatever. It's like, man, I get really, really like jittery about that shit. But how was the crowd?
I was sold out, and I don't know. Paradise Theater's newly renovated. They renovated it, I want to say right before COVID, and then things. So this is the second show I've done there, and it holds just over 200 people, maybe 210, and it's a beautiful theater. It's got an upper balcony, and then Yeah, but
They gotta bring more theaters like that.
it was hard. They wanted to do it somewhere. Like a lot of these memorial gigs are kind of usually kind of thrown together, and maybe at the Opera House or something where people are standing and everything. What was great about this was it was a show. It was the way that I would run like a Rolling Thunder show that we do. Like it was very well put together. Everybody had their time limits, and because we were in a theater, not it wasn't big, or like when you do it at an Opera House or Lee's Palace or a bigger venue like that, where there's no seats, everybody's standing around and milling, so you could have a ton of time between acts, right? So with this, it was like, okay, let's do it fast, and it was great, and it felt like a show.
That's good.
But people were like, they're getting antsy, right? They wanted to dance and stuff, right? And so they'd get up and dance, and especially when Downchild's playing Flip Flop and Fly, everybody's just like up, right? And that was the closing song of the night, and there's something always magical about that, no matter where they are. And they've been doing a theater tour too, right? So a lot of these guys are used to it. A lot of the fans are older too, right? So they can't really stand and.
No, but there is something nice. Like, if I were to take a preference, it would be to go to like more theater shows. I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of my OCD of like how, like the organization of it, because they have people on staff that do what you were doing last night and making sure the run is smooth. But I do think we need more venues that can accommodate that. Yeah. Especially in the northern parts of cities, getting out of in ours in particular, getting out into the GTA, having more theaters to be able to facilitate that stuff. They're very far and few between that are appropriate for what I'm talking about. Yeah, because you have those really old ones that do like the stage reviews and plays and stuff like that for like people who never got a chance to do it in Broadway and stuff, and then they like you can do shows there, but it's not really appropriate because they look like these rundown like Shakespearean stages. And the sound guy doesn't know what they're doing or whatever. And that was the great thing with this, like the sound, it was kicking, and Gary Kendall, who put the whole thing essentially on high, called the people. He really wanted me to walk around and make sure that the sound was good, because like these theaters, you just don't know if they've just how many rock bands they've had in there. Man, you were boss man last night. It was, yeah, it was. That's funny. Cool. But it was also funny getting yelled at by the old guys. So I'm like out the back door having a smoke, and I was chatting with someone. Actually, I'll tell you that story after. Oh, there's Manny, and I'm like, what the fuck, right? And it's John Finley. He's like, Manny, I'm like, yeah, I want to use my mic when I go up, and I'm like, okay. But it's wired, and you have wireless. I'm like, there's a couple wired up there, whatever. We'll figure it out or whatever. Or I'm like, DIs off the stage. No, just handheld. Sorry, right. So there's a bunch of handheld, and then but he wanted to use his wired mic, and I was like, but I could clean them, the mics, and he's like, that'd be great. Like screaming my name like I'm his child. And he's like, really? And I'm like, I'll even do it in front of you. And he's like, so what I did was I cleaned the guitar player's mic, and then I go, look, and I threw the wipe on the floor and then grabbed a new wipe, right? And because you see sound guys grabbing okay, cleaning a mic and then going to the next one with the same wipe, right? That defeats the purpose altogether. Right? And then he's like, I wouldn't even notice that, right? I go, that's how good I take care of my boy. Well, you know what I started doing was I've just been buying mic heads and then soaking those and then replacing them as I go along, right? So like if I can do a week-long string of shows and never use the same head twice. Okay. So that's what I've been doing, because you can buy those by the dime a dozen. Shure just kind of throws them out at people. But as long as you're not sharing them. Yeah. It doesn't matter. But like that's what I mean, like because if I'm doing sound for Supersonic, most of the time I'm using microphones, and I'll tell the singer they have the option of either using their own or I'll use one of mine. Yeah. And if you do use one of mine, you'll have a fresh head. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, Yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing instead of buying these things.
No, that doesn't.
You got to throw them out every time. You're losing money every damn time.
Every time.
So, anyway, but that's cool, man. Like,
but the highlight of the night, okay?
What?
Not really, but this guy really fascinated me. I went for a smoke.
Fascinated
earlier.
You? That scares me.
Yeah, right.
That scares
and
me.
I go out the back door, and then there's this rough-looking older feller with he had this really cool hat on. It was like, you know, those like ski hat, you know, those hats where just this part is out, so it's over your head.
Like a ski mask?
Here. Yeah, I guess a ski masky kind of.
Was it covering his like this part of his?
Yeah, this part of
so
no, and he also had a mask on.
So he was wearing a ski mask.
Yeah, I guess, but a big one. It wasn't like a scary ski mask. It was under the nose mask, right? But yeah,
that's a ski.
It's even freakier, I guess. And he was running down, but he had these 2 bags of like records, right? And he's like, "Hey man, is any of the guys from Rhinoceros here yet?" And I was like, "No, not yet, man. We're just starting sound check with the Hogtown All Stars guys." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna wait for them, right?" And he's got all these records of. He had a Rhinoceros and everything, but okay, not only that is like he's like, okay, who would be in the band right now, right? So Danny Wise is in the band. Okay, cool. I'm gonna bring the Rhinoceros records, but he also played on Bette Midler, so I'll bring her record. He also played on this Everly Brothers album, so I'll bring that one. And then he's like, oh, okay, Peter's here, so Peter played. Like he had records for everybody to sign. That so not only their band, but even when they were a side musician.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was pretty whack.
That's
right?
crazy.
And I'm like, that's a lot. I'm like, but the problem is they might be coming in the front later. A lot of guys aren't coming for sound check and whatever. And I felt kind of bad. And he's like, so bad from, I don't know. And he's like, oh yeah, I've been doing this for years. They already know who I am. And they did. And he was at the Blue Rodeo show the night before, and he met Jim Cuddy, and he took pictures of them, and Jim Cuddy signed everything. Craig Keeler didn't, and he said, because of COVID. And he's like, I understand, man. And he goes, that's why I wear a mask, and if they don't want to sign it because of COVID, I get it. It sucks, but I've been doing it for years. Then another drummer dude is just like, oh, I didn't know you were going to be here. He's like, yeah. He goes, you already signed a bunch of records, but then when I went, home and I noticed you played on these other records, and I need you to sign those one day, right? He's like, when are you going to be out again? This guy, the fan, like just a fan, like the fan of the fans, man. And it's
wow.
He's got thousands upon thousands of records, and he's a super signer, and he's for himself, not for eBay, for himself.
You can tell the ones that are for eBay. I mean, this guy seems like he's just a genuine fan of. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the works of of the artists and so many branches of what they do. That's a fan. That's a true fan. You don't get many of those, and just so that way people know, no matter how famous you are, you can name a lot of those people because they're far and few between. They're very rare that kind of follow your career from start to finish. You can pinpoint a lot of those fans when they come out to shows, when they rep you in any way. Like they're it's a fan club, and it's really nice to see that kind of mentality. And I'm sure that guy, he wasn't a young guy, right? The guy was probably middle age.
Man, closer to 60. He was very rough looking. Which was crazy. Like I feel like he lives in a basement apartment with his records, and music is definitely his
he's happy.
life.
He's happy. The guy.
The more I went out there, and he was there the whole time, and then he goes, I just don't want to be in the front, right? Like I look weird when people walking in, right? So I'm like, okay, like
very self-aware,
but also very like out there too, right? Like there's a little bit of something. But he was such a genuine guy, and when you go out, like he was listening to the tunes and crazy lifestyle, and I don't know how some of these guys live this long. Like I don't think he really, I don't know if he didn't even look like he worked. Like I don't know how these guys do it, right? Maybe they're on welfare. Maybe not. I mean, I don't know what he is.
Maybe he's a CEO.
CEO of records, because oh my god! But it's just amazing, and it's all gone now because I don't know if just that knowledge, right? Of I think because we Wikipedia and we get the answer so fast, it doesn't stay with us. Where this guy was buying records, and and I've done this too. Like when I go used record shopping, I'm flipping through and I'm looking who played bass. Like I always try to find. Because I have some, cool off things. But then the problem is, like, a lot of times those records suck. Except for, like, the one song that my favorite band, like, Paul Jackson played on.
That was the picnic basket of buying a record back then, man. Was like, yeah, you're buying it pretty much for that one song. You'll either find some hidden gems on it or the rest of the album will suck. But at the end of the day, you own that shit. Yeah. You made your choice.
Because Danny was signing him, and I'm like, do you own all these? He's like, hell no, right? It's this, like, which is even crazier right? When you talk to people that have been on records. Like, I mean, now it doesn't matter because everything's on Spotify or iTunes or whatever. But, like, a lot of guys just didn't even know if they made the cut on the record because there would be like, okay, 3 guys coming in and do guitar solos.
Well, there's a lot of like pubs and stuff like that I know now that are doing nights, and I don't want to say too much because it might be something that even friends of ours want to do, but they're doing like album listening nights at pubs. And they're doing it kind of like like in place, not in place of trivia, but like like trivia night, like pub trivia nights and stuff like that, where they do like a listening session, and they talk about the history of it and stuff like that. And I think that's really cool. One for like musicians that just want to geek out, because there's a lot of us that just enjoy the history of it, which is why we fucking do this show. But yeah. But 2 for even just learning and like just escaping the electronicity of it, and just going back to just listening to a record front to back.
People don't do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, how long does it take to listen to a record front to back? What, an hour and a half?
Well, I
maybe
mean,
an hour?
Because with records, it was what, 39, 42 minutes. Like you couldn't go past 45 minutes. Right?
Yeah. So generally you'd have 6 and 6. 6 at side A, 6 side B.
5 and 5. Depends, yeah.
Yeah, depending on what kind of band it was. Like if you have a jazz album, you're listening 3 and 3.
3 and 3, 1 and 1. Fuck.
Dream Theater, 1 and 1.
So many, side A and side B.
But yeah, I mean, like if you, when pop music started getting, we should, one day we'll talk about like the rule of the 330.
330, yes.
Because that's a really, I fucking hate the rule, but it's amazing how it shaped pop music so much. Because I mean, pop music back in the 60s and 50s, it was 245.
245. But somehow they slid a bridge in there. The kids today, they don't even make a bridge, man. No, where are the bridges, kids?
Well, we didn't have bridges back in the 50s either. We had solos. Piano and guitar solos.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was more blues too. So
yeah, it was all 3-chord progressions. Yeah. And shit, man, Hound Dog had 2 solos.
But more of the, they would the faster tunes, but a lot of the ballads would have
nice bridges in there, man. Yeah, like if you listen to guys like Paul Anka in the late 50s or Frankie Avalon or Frankie Valli, they had killer bridges. Like stupid bridges. Yeah. And that's like bridge to
a point where it didn't feel like a bridge, where and then it turned into like songs had movements. Here's my bridge. Yeah, out of nowhere.
It's a song within a song at that point, and it's like these little movements that happen. Just to put it in perspective, Bohemian Rhapsody has 4 bridges. And but they're like if you want to think of Bohemian Rhapsody in pop context or pop format, but it's actually movements. There's movements within the piece because it is a piece. It works very much like an operetta, where there's movements within the piece, and a lot like songs of the Renaissance and things like that, and. Rather, Bohemian Rhapsody is very Wagnerian, so it's got these like just everything coming at you like that. So anyway, my point is, songs with bridges, bridge writing is an art form in itself. I know people in Nashville that are like professional bridge writers.
That makes sense.
Because I heard Billy Joel say it once. He said, writing a bridge, he's like, I had songs for like the first 2 albums that he wrote that didn't have bridges. He was just so scared of bridges. He would write these. If you think of like Captain Jack and Piano Man, which are these limericks, right?
Yeah.
And then, New York State of Mind was where he kind of came into having a bridge. But all of his old songs had like jazz forms in it. They were AABA.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, he was terrified of bridges. He would run. He was like, okay, done. Solo.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I love the fact that he's open to talking about that, because bridge writing is something that I still get terrified about too. More so writing for somebody else than writing for myself, because I feel like, I could take the piss out of myself later on. But bridges are rough, man. Bridges are rough.
They really are. There's a few tunes I wish they would come to my mind where the bridge is my favorite part.
Yeah.
That happens, not a lot, but man, there's a couple of songs I can remember them. Pretty beat. Lifted too much today.
I'm trying to think, because there are some bridges that are so beautifully weaved, because there's multiple things that go into a proper bridge. How far away from the form are you going? Yeah. First of all, are you modulating after the bridge? Are you resolving anything musically or lyrically within your bridge? Because the bridge is kind of the realization point. It's the out of body experience of the song. So that's why a lot of like dream sequences kind of happen with bridges of songs, if you look at the music videos and stuff. But bridges are, it's got to be weaved, so the theme of the song is still weaved through the bridge. However, it can be the beginning of a completely different song. Yeah. Which is, if somebody told me you're going to be writing bridges for your own tunes, I'd be like, oh no. Yeah. I'm gonna have a great guitar player and have him solo for everything.
Like a really one just popped in my head is like My Girl. So there's no vocals, the horn line does the modulation. Like that's so when you put a modulation in, it's almost easier because now you have the 2 final chords.
Yeah, right. So just that easy, like he does this ooze and stuff like that, and then that hey hey hey, all the hey heys and like all these different things kind of piling up on each other, and there is a dynamic build going to the the new key of D. How many bass players I know that absolutely hate playing that song? Yeah, and it's like, but it's such a, like, if you think about it, I love it. Musically brilliant.
I love it.
As simple as we listen to it, it's like, oh yeah, My Girl. It's a simple song, but play it.
No. Play it in the groove and everything. I went, oh my god, I was on a gig. I was playing with George St. Kitts and subbing, and it was just wild. When you're subbing and. Subbing's hard sometimes, right? And so you're just thrown in. I'm like, oh my god, I know nobody in the band. This one night, I knew
just trying to find chemistry wherever you can. I knew walls.
Nobody, right? And it's just like it was just like a weird night. Kind of like I knew of them a little, whatever, right? It's just whatever.
It's a job.
It was one of these nights where I was just like, okay, whatever. I'm on my toes. But he's like, okay, My Girl, and I'm like, okay, start it. Can't think of it. And he's like, I'm like, he's like, do. I'm like, there we go. Like,
but isn't that funny, man?
Like,
how many brain farts are like that?
Brain farts. It's just because
brain farts are like that.
Because you get into your head, right? And that's what I tell my students all the time, and it happens to like everybody all the time, right? if you're overthinking and over worried and over, you're gonna make the stupidest mistakes, right?
I literally did that on Saturday, Saturday that just passed. So we were throwing songs into the set, which we never really do at a wedding, right? Because there's set list is like literally spelled out. But there's songs that we wanted to swap out because we had to have an immediate bass sub. And he didn't want to do a couple of the tunes. So we were like, okay, so let's do something that you're comfortable with. And he threw out a couple, and then one of them was You Make My Dreams Come True, Hall & Oates. So I know that song starts with the Rhodesy clav kind of sound, right? But Rich Girl also does. So I started playing Rich Girl. And the drummer, Julian, he looks over at Duncan, who's playing the bass, and Duncan's like,
no.
And then they look over at the guitar player, and he starts playing. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I've done the flip of sitting on the dog in the bay and My Girl. I've done that flip.
Yeah, I see it
twice. I mean,
I get it,
but yeah, it's because when you're just not either over paying attention or not paying attention, and they call a song, you're like, is this the one that goes 1-5-5 or 5-1? I mean, I haven't done it in years, but I probably will do it again, like very soon now that I've put it back in my head. But it's just funny, right? And you just feel like the biggest fool. But then it also could be an icebreaker where, like, you know, because like that one night, right? And then okay, duh, right? The guitar player, you think started like quietly, and then I did it. And then, the singing starts, and then I'm like, oh my God, and I need to look around the band and see their faces, and they're all just like smiling and laughing at me with me.
Yeah.
Like, oh fuck, like that was hilarious, right?
That's
like,
amazing.
Because then the fact that I could play it wasn't like I didn't know the song, like I was playing it well, like as close as I can to the originals. It was like, oh, you just are dumb. That's
Dude,
cool.
I can't tell you.
That's cool.
There are times where I'm like actively singing something, and it always happens when I'm playing keys. But you ever get those gigs where, like, in the monitors, the frequency is like either super mid or super bass, and you can't hear the frequency or like the key basically of what it's in. So I'm singing based on muscle memory at that point because I can't hear shit, right? And then all of a sudden, one of the more trebly instruments, like a guitar or somebody who has like higher end, will play, and it's like, I'm in the wrong key altogether. Like, it happens so much. And there's certain bass players where, like, if I'm like, it's bass and voice at the start of the song, like a Stand By Me kind of thing, right? I will wait those extra 2 bars for a higher instrument to come in because the frequency that they're playing at or the tone that they're playing at is not jiving with my ears at all. I don't have that problem with you. You're one of very few bass players that I don't have that problem with. But there's some bass players where it's like it's like super muddy sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes they play down the octave.
Yeah.
Because you're used to the original, and it is higher than we're generally used to playing. I guess, right? Like a bass line.
Right.
Because we're starting on the octave A instead of the low A, right? A lot of so some guys actually play it down low or whatever, or
But I was finding myself, like, as the night was going on, and I had the monitor right, and I wasn't doing sound on Saturday, so I had a monitor right at my ankles, right, which it's not doing anything for me, so I found myself like, and I'm playing keys that night, and I found my hands moving further and further up the piano, so I can hear what the start of the song is doing. Yeah. I think we were doing like I Want to Dance with Somebody, and at the end, like the synth line just got like piercing at one point. I'm just like, I'm gonna dial that down. Let's take a break.
Yeah.
We're gonna come back. It's not quite an on this day in music history, but it will make history just for the sole fact of
History.
12 notes. We'll be right back. Behind the Hooks with Manny DeGrandis and Daniel Panetta. On this day in music history. And we're back. So it's a little bit of a different one because it's not quite historical. It actually happened this year. So Ed Sheeran won a British High Court copyright battle over his hit Shape of You, which came out in 2017. The judge ruled that he neither deliberately nor subconsciously copied Sammy Chokri's OY. So I'm going to read a quote that Ed actually said. There's only so many notes and very few chords used in pop music. Coincidence is bound to happen if 60,000 songs are being released every day on Spotify. That's 22 million songs a year, and there's only 12 notes that are available. So,
And this has
how
been
do we
happening forever.
well, yeah, I mean, like since the like the whole the history of singer-songwriter really came to fruition in the 60s, because in the 50s there were guys that were performing their own songs, but there were people contracted and on salary by the label to, like Lieber and Stoller and things like, and guys like that were contracted to write for these performers. And there wasn't a lot of this going on until the artists that were writing the songs then became the performers as well. But it's been going on ever since then, where, you know, and now that time has lapsed in a way where there has been so much music out since 1964, let's say. And things are bound to overlap. You know what I mean? Like, and Ed had a point. You know, there's only 12 notes.
Shape of You is a 4. Is it the same 4 the whole time?
Yeah,
right?
the whole time, because he loops it.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, there's a million songs with those 4 chords.
Actually, the Shape of You might be weird because it might be one of those ones that he does where it's only 2 chords.
Shape of You is 4 because F sharp.
Is it?
I want to say F sharp, and there's an A and a B and a C sharp, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
So the hook, I'm sorry, is playing over like a 2-note line kind of thing.
So he got. I don't know that other song. So he got sued because of the actual vocal line,
The melody,
which is really. I'm gonna sidetrack for a second because I'm learning all these ABBA tunes for the subbing in, and there's this one song. It was a smaller hit, or maybe not. I don't even know if it was released, right? And I didn't know the song, and so I had to learn it. And first time hearing it, and the vocal hook, I'm like, that's another song. And I figured it out at the time. Unfortunately, I forget it right now. And I wonder if they got sued, right? It was like, oh my God, that's like, and they wrote a whole song around the answer part of the vocal line.
Oh.
Right. And I was like, you hear that a lot where they steal the second part or the smaller part of the hook.
Yeah.
And they write a whole song around that.
So how
did he write that song? So did he wake up in the middle of the night and wrote it down? Then it could come subconsciously. Did he ever hear that other song?
Well, that's why the judge ruled in his favor, because he didn't consciously or deliberately like copy it, right? So at what point is inspiration too far? So like if you're inspired, like there's a song that Alicia Keys does. That kind of the melody kind of copies "Lonely Boy." Hey there, lonely boy, and that's very similar to one of her songs. I think it's on This Girl's on Fire, and it's very, very like I think it's almost like a hat tip almost to that song. Nobody knows that she's a lonely girl in a lonely world. That's Alicia Keys' line, which is exactly down to the interval, but she didn't get sued.
Yeah.
So at what point is a hat tip okay, or is it deliberately plagiarism?
Well, the Tom Petty, Danny California Chili Peppers, Tom Petty's like, I'm not suing him. It's freaking 3 chords.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with A minor, G, and D.
Right.
Right.
So that's why in legal, you cannot copyright a chord progression.
You can. The blues, right? Like,
You can't. You can't. Oh, but there's a loophole where if you're doing a chord melody, so in jazz tunes or stuff like that, yes, you can register that. But that's the key word. It's a chord melody. Right. So the melody is the important part when it comes to being plagiarized.
So Marvin Gaye and Robin
This
Thicke.
is where it gets weird because that song was deliberately sampled throughout the entire thing. It's an identical to Marvin Gaye's song, but the melody is not at all.
There's some sampling in it?
Yeah, I mean, down to like cowbell and everything. Like the progression is the same.
So that's a tip of the hat, obviously.
Yeah, but I mean, like Will Smith, and I know that is stop it, but Will Smith built a career on sampling people. You know what I mean? Like his whole catalog is a giant sample.
But if
session.
you give the person credit, because he did just the 2 of us. Well, there's that should be a whole other episode, sampling, because I think sampling's brilliant.
I do too. And is it down to like getting permission from the original artist? Is it down to like the artist, the original artist not being well known anymore and clinging to whatever they have, and therefore lashing out and going after these artists that are close? You know what I mean? Like close to their song. You know what I mean? It's rough because you're getting a lot of these guys from the 60s and 70s now that are coming after the new pop artists for plagiarizing.
I mean, it's really hard.
It's rough.
Really hard.
I'm in agreement with Ed Sheeran's win here.
Because George Harrison lost. Yeah. Right? And he did it, and I think he admitted that he knew the song, and it probably just came out, the melody. I forget. I think it was something like that. Like he's like, I didn't mean to copy it. I just thought I wrote a really cool song.
Right. But then you have, like, you watch the deposition of Vanilla Ice for Under Pressure versus Ice Ice Baby. And, you know, he's like, but it's a different bass line. And if you listen to it...
Yeah, he gets rid of one note.
It is a different bass line at that point.
He got rid of one note.
You know, so it's like, oh... At what point do you want them to lose?
Yeah, that's a hard one because the whole world, and that's the difference because the whole world knows that Vanilla Ice is under pressure. The whole world, like everybody, from kids to whatever. Where this Ed Sheeran one...
It can fly under the radar pretty hard, which is why he probably won as 2017 until now. That's not a long court case. To be honest with you, court cases like these can actually last 5 to 10 years. You know, so this is pretty average. Yeah, this is a pretty average one. Which is why the ruling is probably in his favor at this point, midway through what a normal hearing would be. Because, Blurred Lines was almost instantaneously recognizable as Marvin Gaye's song. And oddly enough, the reason why it became so recognizable and people started like calling it out is because it was in the first Charlie's Angels movie with Drew Barrymore and Cameron Diaz and Lucy Liu.
They used that song.
They used the Marvin Gaye version.
Oh, at the same time.
And it's when Sam Rockwell is dancing in the room and you see him switch to the bad guy. And he was dancing to this song. And if you listen to Blurred Lines, it's like, why does this sound so familiar? It's because a lot of people watch Charlie's Angels.
You're saying because the song came back in a little bit.
Yeah, it came back basically twice.
Time, yeah, and then people were like, oh.
So they were able to put two and two together. Because I'm sorry, that was one of the most badass evil guy reveal scenes in
really.
movie
I gotta
history.
watch
It was
that.
so cool.
I think I would have watched it because
And Drew Barrymore was in that scene, and I remember it specifically, vividly because of that song, because he's singing along with it.
Well, yeah, there's a ton.
Sam Rockwell is singing it.
It's really hard because you kind of what I'm seeing. What you generally see is Ed Sheeran is a songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
You can love him or hate him or whatever, but the boy's writing hit after hit, and
he's a talented dude, man.
Playing. So, and then there's a Robin Thicke where you're like, no, we want Robin Thicke to lose because we know that you're writing a last name and it's not really good, and the whole song's about raping women anyways.
But here's the thing. Okay,
and then there's Ed Sheeran, you're like, we want you to win.
Here's devil's advocate. I got to play devil's advocate here. If you listen to Robin's first two albums, I think, I don't know, I can't remember, Evolution of Robin Thicke is a badass album.
I did listen to that.
His R&B chops are hard, man. Hard. To a point where, you didn't know he was Alan Thicke's son until you saw his name and looked at his face. Otherwise, he was an R&B singer through and through. Sweetest Love is one of those songs, that run that he does is insane for a mainstream contemporary song, which ended up being on pop charts, not so much R&B. Mm-hmm. But he was doing what Alan Stone is doing a decade before Alan Stone started doing it. Mm-hmm. So I devil's advocate a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement that of him losing.
Yeah.
I agree that he should lose that battle with the Marvin Gaye song.
Marvin Gaye's family definitely need whoever owns those rights. But that's the other thing.
But
Marvin's
shame on
dead.
Pharrell. But then shame on Pharrell because he produced it.
Yeah, okay, we could go there because I've been in studios where we'll stop for a moment and put on a friggin' number one 70s hit and be like, we got to do it more like that. Not so much stealing the chords or whatever, but this song should be that idea. Literally pulling it up on Spotify in the studio, right? And it's like, okay, that's a cheap way to go, right?
Yeah. But you know what it sounds like with Blurred Lines? It's almost like they're playing to a karaoke track of Marvin Gaye's song.
Yeah,
it's identical.
But I thought that was the point when I first heard it.
I didn't taking the piss out of the song.
I didn't realize he wasn't credited, and just like Zeppelin doing all those tunes back then. I mean, thank God Zeppelin got as big as they did because then they got to. Got to get in shit for stealing, not giving credit because they weren't stealing. Everybody was playing everybody's songs. Problem is, they're like, Page and Plant wrote this. Like, no, you didn't.
Right.
Right. No, you didn't write this. Right. So I'm glad that they, because that was normal. I mean, friggin' listen to the first 4 Stones albums. There's Beatles were doing covers, right? But you gave them credit.
Covers are different, right? Covers are very different.
As long as you give them credit, where there should have been, Marvin should have got. I thought he would have gotten a cool rate because it was blatantly
obvious.
Yeah,
but I think it was because and don't quote me on this, because it wasn't one of Marvin's hits, immediately recognizable.
It's not a hit. I mean,
it's not immediately recognizable as a hit.
You're right because
when you think Marvin Gaye, you think Sexual Healing, you think Let's Get It On, you think What's Going On, things like that. But with this song, because it was more on, it was more of a jam tune on one of the albums than it was like a project piece, like What's Going On is, right? That they were gonna get away with it. That's what it seems like to me. Pharrell would have known better. Pharrell would have known better.
Yeah, because he, he did start out in the sampling scene and knew those legal rights and stuff.
Yeah, and sampling is an art form in itself to incorporate it and modernize it in a way and stylize it for the artist that's doing it. I will say, Will Smith did it right. He had a lot of great hits based on sampling. I mean, Wild Wild West wasn't a great movie, but that song was killer with I Wish sitting underneath it. Just the two of us, like.
But when you're at that level, you get the top of the pick. So someone's already done that because he doesn't write. I'm sure he didn't write anything. What was the Wild Wild West song? What was it called? Oh, it was called Wild Wild West. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
You put me on the spot for a song I don't care that much about.
I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. I think it was just called Wild. But like from the background where somebody writes a hit song and it's like, oh no, this is more for Taylor Swift than whatever, and whatever, right? So Will gets the pick of the crop there, right? So like I want to do an album, and then all the producers come with their gold.
Sure, but producers coming with their gold, yeah, that's a like 100% that does happen, but they're not coming out. The producers aren't coming out song artists aren't coming out and saying, "Hey, sample my song," that's. It's a weird sampling is a weird thing because I love when sampling is done right. However, when it's done terribly and it actually you're killing two songs at that point.
Yeah. When I was young, I thought because whenever I would see someone release a cover song of somebody's, I always in my stupid mind was thinking okay, you would make a demo of it, then you'd send it to their agency, and then they would send it to the artist. So Jimmy Page would sit down and listen to your cover of Stereo Heaven and be like, nope, or yes. That's
adorable.
It was. I was a cute child. Yeah. That's what I thought would happen.
Well,
right?
A&R guys do that.
Yeah.
They do that.
They do. They're like, no, this can't go out. But I don't even know, right? Because if you record a cover right now and you give the credit, you could release it on Spotify.
100%. So, actually talking about that, so if you are releasing a song that is not yours, first thing is registering your performance of it on your songwriter's rights registration, either SOCAN, BMI, ASCAP, whoever you're with, and stating who the composers and lyricists are and the fact that you're performing it. And then after that, when you're going to distribute it on sites like CD Baby for online distribution, that's when you distinguish whether or not it's an original piece or if it's a cover, because that's going to play very, very hard in how the money is divvied up. So as long as everything is covered there, you're following the rules. It's a two-step process: your song registration and performance registration, and your distribution, and then you're fine as long as you're doing that. What I don't understand is how you can miss one of those steps. It's very, very, very apparent that whoever smelt it dealt it. If you wrote the song, they gotta get credit for it, And I'm not just talking like a big up on the description of your YouTube page. I'm talking like they gotta get paid, okay? Because sure, the song wouldn't get recognition if a famous artist wasn't doing it, but you wouldn't be getting the recognition if you weren't doing somebody's song in the first place. So. Just fucking register it.
It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I go for hours on that, right?
Yeah.
I just on my Instagram, I heard I was listening to the Band of Gypsies, Jimi Hendrix, and I was like, oh, Machine Gun, man. It's just like, oh, and it's like war. It's a war song, and we're in the middle of another war, and there was just a line that really. So I'm like, okay, I did, and then Fraser's like, oh, you should do the other one I did, whatever, I don't know when I did it. And but that one got flagged, and it's not going to be played in China and like a whole bunch of countries. And I'm like, whatever. Can my friends in Toronto see it? That's all that matters.
Well, that's okay.
Right?
There should be a section on social media where, because we're able to do it, we're able to either post things public, private. We can eliminate people from seeing posts. We can cherry pick who sees our posts.
Yeah.
Why in music can we not make the choice of, can my friends just see this? Or can a certain few people just see this? Why you got to put a copyright claim as soon as I upload it?
Because you'll play at a gig for whoever's there.
Yeah.
You'll teach it.
Yeah.
You'll write it out for someone.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing.
You'll even record it. You can sit in your recording studio, record the song, but the moment it becomes public, it's like, well, this is the stamp you're getting is copyright claim. And it's like, but it's so there's more specificity to it than just copyright claim. It's like, I'm not looking for monetary gain for this. I'm just looking to, 1, either show how it's played, 2, show my chops, 3, show off in general. I'm not looking for monetary gain. Yeah. My YouTube channel is a giant copyright claim. Okay? I cover songs all the time. Not because I want to get away with or make money on these covers I'm doing, but because I want to show chops that I've built, or I want to show arrangements that I've made, or...
And it gets gigs, because people are like,
it gets gigs.
Where you got to show live
me a
videos
YouTube
now.
Channel.
You have to do a live video now, man. And you know, working on back end of some things, it's like, if they don't have a Spotify or YouTube channel, or...
You ain't getting shit.
Like, or an Instagram where you're doing any of this stuff, or TikTok now, like...
You're not getting anything.
You're not going to get nothing.
Well, think about it. It's your resume.
Yeah. Unless you have a name, you know, you're one of these old cats that have been doing it. Oh, yeah, okay, that's cool. But, yeah, it's a resume, right? That's, for me, it's a resume, right? When I post these play-alongs, people like, people comment, people hire.
Right, so that's the thing, too. So
people hire me to teach those lines.
For non-musician people out there that are listening to this, it's important to note that your resume that you send to your potential employer shows the things that you've done, and then you go on probation once you get hired to see if you can actually do the shit that you said you could do in your resume. Our resume is literally our probation and starting point all at once, because you are showing what you have done on your bio, and then proving that point in a video or recorded song, and then and only then would you be hired for a specific gig. So it's a little bit more stressful. However, platforms like YouTube should capitalize on that a little bit more and be a little bit more how do you say, fucking aware when it comes to who is a content creator versus who is using the platform for actual, potential gigs.
So go and put in Jimi Hendrix into YouTube. You're not going to get any of the original recordings or nothing. And people have been so smart with their wording. So I saw... I guess it was Machine Gun. It was probably Machine Gun, done by the Band of Gypsies. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, okay. So I pushed play on it. But this band just called themselves the Band of Gypsies, and they're doing a cover tune of it, and it was horrendous. And I'm like, why is that the top? For years, there was this Bob Dylan tune. I can't remember the life of me, and it was a cover. But it was the top of the list. It reminded me of the Napster days where you... downloaded
and you waited 3 hours for it to download, and then just to find out it wasn't the one you were looking for at all.
Oh my god, we should do a Napster. I gotta go through old file. I want to do a Napster episode of like the names, like that got so popular, like Bob Marley and what's that Jimmy Cliff tune that was very popular? I Can See Clearly Now. So Bob Marley, I Can See Clearly Now. It's
my favorite was Bob Marley Sweat.
Sweat, yeah. It was like, if anything had a little bit of reggae, they'd just be like Bob Marley.
That's it. I'm telling you, yeah, we should do an episode on Napster, Livewire, Morpheus, and Kazaa, because those platforms were fucking hysterical when it came to music downloads. It's like, you're gonna get this music for free. It ain't gonna be the one you're looking for, but you're gonna get it for free. And the amount of time it took to download, man. I remember, and I'm probably admitting to a crime here, but fuck it. Statute of limitations is up.
This is why it takes a long time for our videos to upload.
Just looking for the copyright claim or the crime that I'm currently committing.
He said crime.
But ding, ding, ding. Everybody had it. And it was, I mean, in a way, the reason why they were able to get away with it was because it was a form of file sharing.
Yeah.
Right? Just like torrents were. And, it's no different than me buying a CD and going, hey, Manny, listen to this, and playing it. So, like, you were sharing the file. And that's why they were able to get away with so much shit. And these sites lasted forever. Napster is still a thing. When I distribute my shit, it goes to Napster.
Yeah, they went legit. Yeah.
They did go legit. So, it's just funny that way. But I will say, to kind of top off the episode here, I am happy for Ed. I'm glad that he won this, because there was nothing to really win. I mean, at the end of the day, he wrote a song, and yes, if there was some vague similarities to, excuse me, oh man, whew, Rolling Rock, killing me. If there's some vague similarities to another song, it's not out of criminality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just for the sheer fact that there's only 12 notes ever. There's only 12 notes.
But not only is there only 12 notes, there's only 3 good notes to sing over a chord.
Well, yeah,
right?
And you're always using the same chord progression.
Yeah,
pop music. John Mayer said it on Hot Ones. He says, back in the day it was the 1-6-4-5 for pop music. Yeah. Now we're doing like the 6-1-4-5 is really popular now. And yes, as much as those can be Rubik's cubed around and still create a cool pop song, at the end of the day, diatonically, there's not a lot of wiggle room, because if you're thinking diatonically, then you really only have 8 notes. So
yeah, exactly, right? If you want to sing in key, there's only 8 notes, right?
If you want to sing Bollywood, then you can work with quarter tones a little bit.
And that's why none of them are getting sued.
I like to sing in quarter tones. I like to work with quarter tones a little bit.
I don't even know where I would start. I'm so mesmerized and in awe when I hear all of them play and the drummers, man. It's like
they're intense.
How do you find? How did you find another subdivision in a beat? Because there's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
I know Western music listeners will give a lot of heat to either Punjabi or Indian or just Middle Eastern music altogether, because it's just not what their ears are tuned to listening to. But I mean, we had to study things like this. We had to do where Catholic schools would do their world religion. We had to do world music courses and things like that, and actually dissect these songs, and they are, holy shit, they're intense, man. If you dissect, I had to dissect singers, where the crazy melody runs that they do over simple changes. Like the changes aren't crazy in Punjabi music. I'm speaking specifically for Punjabi. The changes aren't super crazy. I mean, they're a lot of the time they're basing it on a harmonic chord progression or harmonic mode, I should say. So there's like, you know, a lot of Phrygian movements, a lot of even Locrian movements. But when you get the melodies that come in and the accuracy in which they're able to flip their trills are very different than European trills. So I'm nerding out hardcore. I'm nothing but mad respect for those singers because that's not easy to do. Sitar players, man, they trip me out because it's like they're like just the do you see the action on a sitar?
That too.
You gotta have like elbow strength to push those strings in. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, just it all depends on what you're growing up with, right? And that's just their teaching skills are way different than ours. Like, little Johnny didn't feel like practicing this week, and it's like over there, little Johnny's living at your house, doing your dishes and practicing, like mopping your floors. Like they live with you. Yeah, like they live. Ravi Shankar will have someone living with him, practicing 12 hours a day and mopping his floors like for an hour after that.
But like, they have this hunger to like want to be that great. You know what I mean? Where here in Western civilization, it's like
you just got to be good enough.
You're handed that kind of accolades. You know what I mean? It's like if you can play those 4 Ed Sheeran chords, then you can do it. You know. Whereas over there, it's like, man, that's intense. It's intense. I mean, I don't know. Anyway.
You know what? This just give me an idea for a guest that could speak properly, not like us about this.
We don't speak well at all about anything really. We are Daniel Panetta,
2 guys in a room.
2 guys in a room. We got Daniel Panetta and Manny DeGrandis.
With or with pants on.
I'll never tell. Thank you very much for watching. Check out the links below for support and for our socials. And I don't know. I'll see you next week.
Have a good week, peoples.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Behind the Hooks with Manny DeGrandis.